Art can be anything, they say. Then there's architecture, which is also art, yet different. Obviously, you need a physical structure, often a permanent building forcing itself upon the public. This intrusive presence stands in stark contrast to a typical artwork found in a museum, and for that reason, I believe architects should have less creative leeway than artists. Yet a quick glance at our built environment suggests that the two professions are treated much the same. There appear to be few artistic restraints on contemporary buildings. For some, the only limitation is seemingly gravity. Now, I'm not saying that all contemporary architecture is bad. Rather, I believe the field has shifted its priorities and somewhere along the way has forgotten what is truly important. Think about it. Buildings are meant to stand for decades, if not centuries. It is not only important that they are, but also remain meaningful. Therefore, all buildings should be timeless. But no one finds meaning solely in timelessness. Another quality is also needed. Due to the imposing nature of architecture, our buildings should also be pleasant. That is not to say that there aren't other important considerations, but these two qualities should be regarded as essential. Unfortunately, many new builds possess neither, and that is a problem. This video serves as the counterpart to Let's Build the Perfect City, where we looked into urbanism and the ideas of Leon Krier. Now it's time to explore aesthetics, but since I'm not a philosopher, we'll need the help of some to guide us through such a complex topic. I'll do my best to accurately represent others' views, but please forgive me if I get something wrong. Part 1. Searching for meaning. Probably the most interesting question you can ask yourself when looking at a building is, why was it built like this? What you will discover is a motive, often many, that reflects back at the people who built it. Eventually, when historians will study our buildings, I think they mostly will be viewed as utilitarian and varied. This really shouldn't be much of a surprise, as we're all part of modernity, an era obsessed with efficiency and self-expression. A prime example encapsulating this is IKEA. All the stores are utilitarian, embodying the principle of form follows function. Viewing at the top, purchases below, yada yada. The stores are also distinct from other buildings, irrespective of location. While neither of these is inherently bad, they do not create meaningful buildings. To find out why, let's head to Oslo. In 1986, this uninspiring structure was opened to the public. It was and still is multi-purpose, with both offices and a parking garage. 2 years ago, it was put on the market, and shortly after changing hands, new plans were revealed. The current owner wants to replace the 400 parking spots with even more offices, and the solution is apparently to tear it all down and build something new. The replacement is certainly preferable, but then again, we're talking about a building that is less than 40 years old. This cannot be sustainable, although the decision shouldn't come as a surprise. You see, if the sole purpose of a structure is to serve a function, there will be no value left once the need for said function disappears. In this case, they no longer need a parking garage, and since there's no other reason to preserve the building, it is easier to flatten it. While functionalist architecture can be pleasant, and all our buildings should be somewhat functional, it will never be timeless. Moving on, we find a building that was finished last year. Here, there's a different force at play. The desire to stand out. This pursuit of contrast as an end in itself is strange, and it manifests in two different ways, either by being truly unique, or by simply being different. In the case of the latter, you're hinging the building's value on a trend or the surroundings, and if it were to change, then the building would no longer be unique. Think of your local hipster who ended up moving to Berlin only to become one of many. This, of course, isn't timeless. For that, you need true uniqueness. Someone like Hundertwasser comes to mind. Take this peculiar building of his. It's in Magdeburg, but it could have been located anywhere and still retained its uniqueness. Thus, it's a timeless building. But is it pleasant? In this case, I would say yes, although not for the reason of it simply being different. After all, unique buildings can also be disagreeable. Going back to our earlier example, it was named Oslo's ugliest new build. while it may be timeless, it is unpleasantly so, resulting in a merger of two qualities that should not be combined. Buildings like this aren't meaningful, they're selfish, and certainly not something we need more of. So if neither functionalism nor uniqueness are ends in themselves, what is? The answer can be found next door to our parking garage. Unlike its neighbor, this building isn't facing demolition. Instead, it recently underwent renovation. The 105-year-old hotel isn't the industry's most functional, nor is it particularly striking. Nevertheless, people find value in it and continue to preserve it. In this case, the value lies in the building's beauty. As it turns out, what is beautiful is meaningful. But in order for us to have this conversation about beauty and how it relates to architecture, we must have a shared understanding of the subject and the difficulties surrounding it. Part 2. Problems of Beauty. Beauty is strange. It's a word that we, or at least I, use frequently, yet its meaning is not so obvious. In everyday speech, when someone asserts that something is beautiful, we presume that that person is not only describing something pleasant, but also believes that we should agree with his or her judgment. Now, as we all know, that will not always be the case, which raises the question, how can one make a universal claim about the beautiful? Or in other words, how can I demand everyone to agree with me that something is beautiful? Philosophers have spent much time thinking about this, and not everyone believes that we can. Simplified, one group called the empiricists contends that beauty lies in the eye of the beholder. Meanwhile, another group, the rationalists, not only think beauty is universal, but can also be defined. Both beliefs are, however, problematic. If it's true that beauty is simply a private matter, then public discourse about aesthetics must be meaningless. Conversely, if it is universal, there should be some property that we're able to define. But what exactly could that be? Attempts to define it has always resulted in disagreement. There is, however, a different way to approach the subject. One that allows me and you to judge the beautiful without falling into either of these two camps. What exactly that is requires some explanation. Part 3. Kant and Beauty. Let's say that we want to judge whether or not this building is beautiful. According to the German philosopher Immanuel Kant, there are 4 moments that must be fulfilled for us to reach an aesthetic judgment. The first of which has to do with disinterest. He's not saying that we must be uninterested in the object. Naturally, beauty attracts, and of course we prefer the beautiful over the ugly. To understand what disinterest means in this context, let's illustrate this. A traffic light is something we've all encountered. We know what it's supposed to do, and have a general understanding of what it should look like. Thus, we have a concept of traffic light. Then there's Linus. He can't see either red or green, nor does he know how a traffic light functions. He can still experience it, but for him it is something different. This disconnect between the world we perceive and the world in itself is what led Kant to believe that instead of us merely sensing the world, we are instead actively shaping it through the power of our mental faculties. Thus, according to him, our knowledge of the world does not derive empirically. Rather, it is us providing concepts that allow for knowledge of experience. Okay, so these concepts are essentially forming our perception of the world. Usually the process is straightforward. We encounter objects or particulars that we place into universal concepts. For instance, this I believe to be a flower. To find out, I check to see if its qualities match the concept of flower. In this case they do, and I judge it to be indeed a flower. However, sometimes we encounter particulars for which there's no universal concept. Kant believes one such case is when we experience something beautiful. This is where the disinterested aspect comes in. You see, if there's no concept provided, then we don't exactly understand what it is that we're experiencing. Therefore, when I say this is beautiful, I'm not talking about the building. Instead, I'm talking about the representation of beauty found in it. This means that aesthetic judgments aren't objective, as they're not about the object. Instead, they are subjective. What is happening here is that Kant is separating judgments of beauty from other types of judgments. Many things in life can be pleasing, but not all those things are beautiful. Goodness can also be pleasing, but we never judge something as good in itself. Behind is a desire or a goal, meaning we have an existing concept. Take for instance functionalist architecture, which is trying to achieve efficient floor plans. We might judge IKEAs to be good buildings because they fulfill their purpose, but these goals reflect back at existing concepts, meaning we're not disinterested. The same goes for the agreeable. Some prefer dudes, while others prefer gals. Those preferences are, however, based on individual desires and differ between people. At this point, we've established that judgments of beauty must be disinterested and thus subjective. But how is it then possible that anyone can make universal claims about the beautiful? After all, if it's for each and every one of us to decide, shouldn't beauty be relative? Well, Kant doesn't believe that, and his reasoning goes as follows. Since none of us have a concept of beauty, that must mean all of us go through the same experience when we encounter the beautiful. So instead of finding the correct concept, the imagination is left searching only to never really find one. This harmonious sensation is supposedly what is pleasurable, and Kant calls it free play. Turns out, whatever gives us that feeling of harmony is what we judge to be beautiful. This constant search also explains why beauty is timeless, which in turn explains why it's meaningful. Normally, we find value in things that fulfill a purpose, either in the form of what they do or what they're meant to be. But with beauty, there is no apparent purpose, yet it feels like the object and our mental powers were made for each other. This is why beauty is an end in itself. It doesn't depend on some moral or cognitive goal. It's an ultimate value, something that we pursue for its own sake, and for the pursuit of which no further reason need be given. Still, you may wonder how there can be disagreements about the beautiful if it is universal. Kant's answer would likely be that we often conflate aesthetic judgments with personal motives or desires. That being said, he believes agreement is possible and proposes a shared capacity for taste, and when taste is unimpaired, we should all be able to agree about what is beautiful. Even if we're unable to do so, we must remain open to the possibility of agreement and assume that it could occur under ideal conditions. Part 4. Who creates beauty? Given that there's no single property that defines beauty, it leads us to question how it's even created. One proposed explanation is through the genius, referring to individuals with an innate ability to produce beauty. They aren't bound by conventional standards. Instead, their creations are often for others to imitate. Think of figures like Mozart or Gaudi. One could say that the genius is able to create beautiful works that are truly unique, creations that transcend cultural boundaries and get universally recognized. That being said, there are many things in life that we find beautiful that weren't created by these gifted individuals. For one, there's beauty in nature, but more importantly, for this video, there is also beauty created by ordinary people. Roger Scruton calls it everyday beauty. He uses the example of a decorated table. By arranging ordinary things in a harmonious way, one can turn an everyday experience into something meaningful. Notice that once you start replacing individual pieces though, the meaning disappears. Of course, my decorated table isn't fine art, nor will it captivate you. Rather, it's a type of background beauty, if you will. These small, seemingly insignificant details can collectively do wonders by enhancing our overall sense of well-being. One area where this is evident is in architecture. Part 5. Beauty and Urbanism. These houses were all built by ordinary people. There's nothing special about any of them, and stylistically, they're not superior. One could readily argue that a Victorian, Japanese, or even modern house is more appealing. Yet, if we were to substitute some for these more exotic options, our street wouldn't improve. Instead, it would worsen. Consider each building a note that together forms a melody. In the original streetscape, the totality is harmonious. In our alternate streetscape, it isn't. It is obvious what is wrong, as these strangers beg for our attention. But when you actively seek someone's attention, there's an expectation that you should be worthy of it. However, these buildings, like the ones they replaced, are just ordinary. Thus, we're left searching for a greater purpose that is nowhere to be found. Now, critics will say that some of these out-of-place buildings do carry a value, and if we were to judge them independently, the rest of us would also find them meaningful. While that assertion is certainly true, what is often forgotten is that people do not intentionally read every building, nor do any of us have the capacity to do so. Why would we? The vast majority of houses will never set foot inside, making the totality irrelevant to the public. For example, these balconies may be appreciated by their residents, but for everyone else, they're ugly and ruin the streetscape. Whether modern urbanists approve of this particular building, I do not know. But it's important to understand that once you promote independent structures, you will inevitably get many subpar examples, or buildings standing out for no apparent purpose. But let's pretend for a second that we lived in a world where all architects were brilliant, only creating masterpieces. That would have been fantastic, although it wouldn't ensure beautiful streetscapes. Walking down the street is an everyday activity, and we do not pay special attention to all things familiar. Even if the street was only made up of unique houses that were all beautiful, we still wouldn't listen to each and every melody. Instead, we would go on with our lives, placing the built environment in the background of whatever preoccupies us. Much more important than the buildings themselves are therefore the harmony between them. This, however, is not to suggest that all balanced neighborhoods must be beautiful. Some melodies are pleasing while others aren't, and we should not confuse completeness with beauty. Neither should we assume that strict uniformity creates harmonious environments. Copy-paste neighborhoods have sprung up in various styles, and hardly any would we characterize as beautiful. This makes total sense, as only one recurring note is noticeable. Lastly, the search for harmony should not lead to a disregard of the genius. Some buildings are meaningful on their own, and they deserve to stand out. Sometimes, the genius will even design remarkable buildings that also blend in. Part 6. The answer. I've explored beauty in relation to urbanism and introduced the Kantian genius and Scruton's everyday beauty. What has yet to be addressed is how this can all fit together. Now, some of you may know where this is going, as the subject has already been featured in a previous video, albeit with a different take. I'm of course talking about Leon Krier's vision of the true city. Krier proposes settlements mirroring the urbanism of the past, with a stark divide between public and private buildings. His vision is already good, in that it fulfills specific purposes, but equally important, there's an aesthetic value here. By reducing buildings down to two categories, we can easily separate our two types of beauty in a harmonious way. Public structures designed to stand out should be Kantian, while private buildings forming a collective identity should draw from Scruton. This approach is likely to create a pleasant whole, as most buildings are private, thereby reserving uniqueness for the few that are already treated as special. Now, Krier favors a mixture of classical and vernacular architecture. If you want to see what that looks like in practice, you should watch this video. His approach is certainly pleasant, if not a bit conservative. After all, we never know what the genius will produce, and must recognize that some buildings are beautiful even if they're unconventional. This also goes for modernist architecture. The main point here is that there's nothing wrong with being different when you're meant to be, and those who are not part of the collective do not affect it either. For instance, these three Parisian buildings differ wildly from a typical Haussmannian one, and that's fine, because they're all public and have been assigned special importance within the urban fabric. As they scream for our attention, we recognize them as something different, and are therefore compelled to judge them independently. Of course, in this example, they're not all acceptable though. One is beautiful, another is plain, and the last one is hideous. Needless to say, regardless of architectural style, we should always strive for beauty, either in itself or as part of a collective. By now, I hope that we can all see why beauty is difficult to create, yet so easy to destroy, and how even a well-meaning architect with a nice design can cause anger simply from not considering the nuances of beauty. As we strive to create better places, it is important to remember that aesthetics is an integral part of urbanism. And while Krier's vision of the true city isn't perfect, his clear separation between private and public helps us reduce an aesthetic tension that is so commonly found today.